At the New Year seminar on February 7th, our presenter was Les Thorne from No Turning Back in the UK. Throughout the day, Les demonstrated 3 projects. In this first video, Les creates a double-sided lidded box.
To keep this loud, I've got to stay at home and just shout it. It's too loud for me, can you turn it down? Is that possible? Someone else needs to, oh, there we go, sorry, I was expecting this young man over here to do it. Yeah, that's better. Anyway, good morning everybody. Yeah, good. It's good to be back in Ireland. I just got to start, there's a young person over there. Are you in the right place? You're right, definitely in the right place, good, because it always worries me when a young person turns up to a wood turning demo, you think, do they need you because obviously the demographic isn't normally as young as that. So, who's seen me demonstrate before? Live. A few of you have seen me live before, so that's good. So I've been over to Ireland for a few years now. I used to do some teaching at the carpentry store pre-COVID days, but haven't really been over since then, so it's great to be back. So I'll talk a little bit about myself before we start. Okay? Now, I'm Les Thorne, I'm a production turner, I'm a jobbing wood turner. Okay? So I get the unenviable task of turning what other people want me to turn. That's my job. Okay? It's very difficult, not impossible, to make a living from wood turning what you want to turn. Luckily, I love my job. You know, I have a fixation about making wood round. Okay? And the more wood I can make round, the better I feel. It's as simple as that. And I do lots of mundane work. You know, I make literally square wood round for a job. I turn candle tubes, I turn simple things, I turn ornate things. I pretty much do across the board. I also do large scale turning. I can turn up to 10 feet long, I can turn up to 7 feet in diameter. Okay, not 10 by 7, that would be really big. But basically I do columns down to cribbage pegs. That's what I do. I do a little bit less of the big stuff nowadays because you get to a point in your life where you can't be bothered. You know, it just becomes too heavy for stuff like that, so I tend not to do so much of that, and I make a good living, and I've made a good living for the last 25 years out of turning, so I'm more than happy about what I do in that. So what am I going to do today? Well, I'm not going to turn up and I'm going to turn stair spindles and chair parts, because that would be boring. Plus, that's my day job. So I don't want to come along at weekends and do things like that. I want to have a little bit more fun. So I'm going to put some of the techniques, some of the tooling techniques, some of my experiences into some projects that hopefully will give you what this whole demo is about, and that's called added value. Okay? So I will show you things that will, you know, I will show you a project that you may hate. Okay? It doesn't bother me. You may never want to turn one of those ever. It doesn't bother me. What it will have in it is it will have a series of techniques that you can put into your own turning. I'm all about the tooling. I'm all about efficiency at wood turning. Okay? But not anal about it. You know, I'm not that tool needs to be ground at 42.5 degrees, because at 42.25 it doesn't work. We know that's just rubbish. That's just demonstrators rubbish to get you to try and overthink the project. Because ultimately, what are we doing? We're getting a round tree, we're cutting it into squares, we're making it round again. We're getting a lump of metal and sticking it into a lump of revolving wood. Okay, so we're going to talk about tooling, about how to get you better, just doing very, very simple things, because having taught for a number of years, a lot of you guys are looking for what I'm looking when I go and see a golf pro. When I go and see a golf pro and I'm in a bad shop or a bad shape, I want him to give me that little golden bullet, that little bit of nugget of information that takes me from zero to hero. The same as you guys, you're inside a bowl, you're not quite getting that cut, you want somebody to come along and say, just open that flute, just drop your right hand, and then suddenly it all works. That's what you guys are looking for. So some of the things I do today will be literally to try and get you to do that. Some of it will be a bit shocking, okay? Some of it will be trying to get you to remember things by showing you diggings. Every digging I have today will be on purpose, hopefully. Okay? The other thing about this demo is interactive. I need you to ask questions. Okay? It's all very important that don't be shy about asking questions as we go. So what we're going to do, we're going to do a 3-part project to begin with. The great thing about a 3-part project is the fact that it shows us how to put stuff together and chucking, shows us how to use jam chucks, shows us how to work with the project we love. Because what I get when I'm in my day job is I will get a drawing. Okay, so somebody will send me a drawing, they'll hopefully send me the wood. Most of the time I'm what's called free issue wood, in the fact that they supply me the wood because that makes my life easier. Also, if it cracks or falls to bits, it's their fault then, which is even better. So in effect, I get this thing, and the first thing I look at is how can I hold that? How can I turn that in the most effective way possible? Now you might say to me, that's fine, I've got all day to turn that bowl. I don't need to be effective. That's fine, okay? But you will enjoy turning more if you get better at it. I guarantee you'll enjoy it more if you get better at it. So that little progression, even if it's baby steps, even if you turn once a month, once every 3 months, every time you pick up that tool, you get that little bit more confident in sharpening, you get that little bit more confident in presentation, you get that lovely shaving. Okay, I spent 10 years demonstrating the Rolling Monroe hollowing tool, so I turned a lot of wet wood in demonstrations. And believe me, you'd be amazed how experienced wood turners still like to see the shavings fly. Okay, so it's a great thing to do. Now, the difference between me and a lot of you guys, okay, is I'm a wood turning prostitute. Simple as that, okay? I go into the workshop for money. I do anything, well, nearly within reason for money. But that's what I do. I go in there. So I need to get that done as quickly as possible, okay? So some of my cuts will be a little bit pushy in my workshop. So what I show in demos is I don't do it as pushy, because what we liken myself to is I'm like a trawlerman, okay? A fisherman, a trawlerman, I go out, I rake the seabed, I'm trying to make as much money as quickly as possible, and the process is enjoyable, but it's not the main part. For you guys, for most of you guys who are not doing it for a living, the process is important. Those nice shavings, that hiss of that sharp tool, that perfect finish off the tool that you're striving for. That's what we're looking for. The other thing is I'm a realist. Okay? I don't faff. Okay? I also don't believe I'm the finished object. So if you came up to me during a break and you said, Les, that cut you did there, I've got a better way of doing that. Okay? I have no problem. If it is, I'll adopt it immediately. I won't give you any credit, of course, but I'll adopt it immediately. So we'll go into there, and because, you know, I'm a realist. I don't think, oh, I've been doing it like for 25 years, I'm the finished article, so that's not a problem. So what we're going to make, we're going to make this 3-part project, we're going to make this sort of little urn, okay, and it's got what's called a mood finial. Okay, it's got a mood finial because sometimes you're pointy and sometimes you're short and fat. So it's got a double-ended finial because it's an interesting, I always, when I say short and fat, I always try not to focus on anybody in the audience, so apologies if I looked at anybody then. Okay, so what it is, it's an interesting thing to make a double finial. The problem about it is it makes the box completely useless, doesn't it? You know, you fill that full of your little blue pills and you can't get the lid on, can you? Yeah, it's hopeless. You put your marijuana in there or whatever and you can't put the lid on because it's no good as a vessel. But being no good as a vessel means I can sell it for more. Because an object of art is more expensive than a utilitarian piece. So we're working on that. So some interesting things here. It's in 3 parts there, but it gives us the idea of hollowing, shaping. We'll talk about how to get the best out of the tools and stuff like that when we're working. So we're going to use all this wood to make that, which seems a bit of a waste. But that's okay, because the top and the bottom, the main part of the waste, is sycamore. I hate sycamore. Okay? I have this thing about sycamore. It's a long story, which I won't bore you with unless you come to the pub tonight. Okay? But, you know, sycamore, it's a self-seeded weed, sycamore. And the only reason people like sycamore is they can throw colour on it. Which means they don't like sycamore, do they? They just like the fact that it's a white wood. Now, I used to go around in the UK going, I hate sycamore, and everyone goes, yeah, that's not very nice wood and stuff like that. You get nice shavings, but other than that. And then, a couple of years ago, I don't know if you knew on the news, there was a sycamore tree called the sycamore gap tree. And these idiots cut it down. Suddenly, sycamore is like your favourite pet. So I'm going around going, I hate sycamore. They go, oh, we don't like you now, Les. You know, you don't like sycamore. We do. Because suddenly this self-seeded. So all you've got to do to make something famous is just to stick it at the gate. It just seems a bit strange to me. No, on that note, that is very sad that they cut that tree down. So what we're going to do is we're going to work out first which order we make it in. Do we make the base first? Do we make the top first? Do we make the middle first? We're going to make the middle first. So here's our piece of middle. It's at a beach. The middle's nicer. Okay, so mounting it on the lathe. Now, my demos are aimed at everybody, so if you think, oh, that's a bit obvious, Les, I know that, I've been turning 500 years, you know, of course I know that. That's fine, the guy sitting next to you may not know that, so that's all you have to take one for the team. Now, before I start, you had Gary Lowe last year, didn't you? Yeah, so I've got a file on the dents at the tall rest. Right, so what we'll do, mount it up between centres. Pretty standard stuff. This is I'm just looking at the audience. So I said, did you do metric or inches? Metric. You're proper.
We remember inches, but we do metric.
So what we have 111.5 millimetres by 75 and a quarter by 75 and an eighth. No, that's wrong. 75 and a half. Okay, right. So there's our piece of wood between centres. It's all nice and firm and stuff like that. And now we're going to start. So straight away, how fast do we have it go? One of the first things we begin to say is how fast. Well, you turn as fast as you feel comfortable. What's too fast? The wood flying off. That's too fast. So in effect, turn the lathe up until you feel like the wood's not going to come off and don't go any further. Simple as that. Because we will get a better cut generally at a higher speed. Not always, but generally our first line of attack is to go quick. Now, the spindle roughing gouge, a much maligned tool. Okay? It's a maligned tool for hobbyists because you can't turn a bowl with it, and most hobbyists tend to turn lots of bowls. So this idea of the spindle roughing gouge, much maligned. We know we don't use this on cross grain. Okay? And we don't use it on cross grain not because it doesn't work, because you run the risk of it going wrong, and when it goes wrong, this is a weak tool. So it's a risk reward. Turning is always a risk reward. It's always that idea of you put the tool into the wood in the best way possible, minimising the risk. So if you wanted me to turn a bowl with this tool, I could. Okay? But I wouldn't because it's stupid. Okay? So when you see people turning bowls with this, there's no need, there's no benefit to it. Now I do lots of cuts in my job where the risk is minimised against the reward. So basically it's a dodgy cut, but it's the best way of me achieving that result. Okay? That's the cuts that I don't teach you. That's the cuts you need to learn yourself. And actually as a hobbyist, most of you don't need to use those cuts, you just don't do that type of work. So what we're going to do, we're going to rough this out. Now we can learn everything about wood turning, making this piece of square wood round. Okay? All the rules of wood turning, making this piece of square wood round. Now most of you, and I know this through experience, will make this piece of wood round badly or ineffectively. The reason you'll do that is because it's very easy to do it wrong because the wood's very strong, it's going quite quick. Okay? And even if I push in this end, I still see I'm removing wood. There was a bit of wood came off there. So even if I do something completely stupid, the strength of the wood and the fact it's going quite quick means the wood will come off. Okay? So I could use a scraper on there. I can go in here like this and do this because look, there we go. I can use a scraper on that. I could use a parting tool. I could pretty much use anything. I could use a well-sharpened spade to cut that wood round. Now the problem with that is that when you get a piece of wood that's not so strong, or you get a big piece of wood that's now not going as quickly, you haven't got that speed and that strength to make up for your bad tooling. Okay? So then you have to cut the wood properly. So people say to me, yeah, I can make this round, but I put a long stair spindle on there, and I put the tool in, and a bit of wood jumps off. It bounces off. Well, that's because you're not learning how to do it as well as you can at this stage. So what we want to do is when we look at our tool rack, what have we got? Okay, when we look at our tool rack, millions of tools. He or she who dies with most tools wins. Okay? I rely on that. I sell some tools. I rely on you buying as many tools as possible. You need loads of them. You collect tools like I collect fishing rods. Okay? I don't need them, but I want them. So there you go. So those tools, all those tools you've got basically will all be steel. Most of them nowadays will be high-speed steel. But what they all will have, hopefully, is an angle. So you have a rack full of angles. Okay? And you have a rack full of angles, and a few of you will then present the tool horizontal on the tool rest. So what you've got now, is you've got your tool off the rack, you've ignored the fact it's got an angle, and you've stuck it in horizontal. Okay? This angle needs to be used. So I want to be down. I want to use that angle there there's my cut. Okay? And the great thing about that is even if this wood is very weak and bouncy and long, I'll still make a cut. Even if it's going, let's go, even if it's going, let's go as slow as we can, there. You see, I can still make a cut. If I'm here, there you go. Do you see the difference? It's the perfect thing about literally by going from here to there, I make a cut. So if you imagine that happening on a bigger scale, I've just solved some of your problems. Just getting that tool in that right place takes all the pressure off that tool. Now you learn that by doing big stuff and thin stuff. So when I do really big columns, you go in like that, the wood's going to eat you. Okay? So, and if you go in very thin wood like that, you're going to go in at a bad angle, it's going to bounce it off. So it's getting that in the right place. So that's the perfect, it doesn't normally work as well as this, you're very lucky. See, if I go in like this, it doesn't work. If I go in like that, I can make a cut. And that just shows the difference. The other thing you'll notice about my roughing, is that in the right place, boss? The other thing you notice about my roughing gauge is I have quite a long angle on that. I don't talk too much about degrees. Okay? I talk more about long angles and short angles on the basis that as this angle gets longer, it gets more acute. Okay? So this is around the 40-degree mark. 35 to 40 degrees. It's a good cutting angle. I like that on my roughing gouge because it makes the roughing gouge more versatile. Somebody said to me once, they said, actually, but you lose strength on the edge. This is high-speed steel. It's designed to cut steel. I'm not really worried about the edge until it becomes what I would call a tin foil edge. So if I ground it back too far, then you can get the edge starting to roll over a little bit, even on high-speed steel. But I want to get that as sharp as possible. I've made up a few words in my life. Sliceability. That's what we're trying to achieve today. We're trying to achieve sliceability with our tool. Anyway, let's do some proper. The rest of the touch low. So I'm working above centre, and all I'm doing is running backwards and forward. Now you notice I don't wave the tool about, I don't scoop. It all just seems a lot of effort to me. All I'm doing is just moving the tool backwards and forwards like so. And if I want to, I'll grab the shavings and throw them in the bin like that. And the piece is round. So there's no jumping, no histrionics, okay? I'm not running around, okay? You don't get this physique by wasting energy, believe me. Once again, I've tried not to focus on anybody. You're obviously a very good returner, sir. Okay, so we're going to go along there, and we're going to just make that cut. Now, because I've used the sensor, if I want to do that cleaning cut, I can run down there, and that's my cleaning cut down there, and that's now ready for sanding. Okay? No skew working up that. I'm straight onto a 180, 240 grit finish, job done. There's no point in picking up another tool. Okay, just to do that, I'm in the real world, don't forget. I'm not trying to get the best finish off the tool, or the perfect finish off the tool. I'm trying to get the best finish in the allotted time to get onto the sanding. So there's our piece of wood round. One last thing we can do with this, we can actually practice our skew cut. Okay, so we can now practice our planing cut with a skew, but we can do it with a roughing gouge. So why would you do it with a roughing gouge, I hear you ask? Thank you very much, sir. You do it with a roughing gouge because the roughing gouge has a margin for error. When we talk about the crossover between a gouge and a skew, we can practice with a skew with a gouge because you have that margin for error. You know, you can do a cut with a skew, and if you take a wrong breath or burp halfway through it, you'll have a dig in. With a gouge, you can probably wave it about a bit and still get away with it, but we can still practice the technique of things. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to rub the bevel. We're going to ride the bevel. We're going to get that bevel now in contact. So all I have to do with that is to turn the tool sideways. I go to there. They can hear the bevel. There. And now I'm on the bevel, and now I can take a cut. You can hear the bevel in contact. And what I've just done now, if I look at this, I've just upped it 20%. Okay? So I've changed this finish here from a sort of 180 grit finish to possibly 240, 320. Just by turning that tool on an angle. Same tool, I'm not going to buy another one. Same tool, sharp. Just by putting on an angle, I've just upped its game. Okay, so little things like that, get those tools wherever possible in the right position to optimise the cut. Now the problem with this is, okay, especially if you haven't been turning very long, is the movement between bad, good, perfect, amazing is actually very small. Okay, and when you say to somebody, just go away a few degrees, they go, and then the tool digs in, and it puts them off doing it or something like that. So it is a very subtle movement. Okay? My wife's still amazed that I have any sort of subtle movements, to be fair, but that's another story for another day. Right, so we're going to go along there, and that's our wood round. It's a bit wormy, this. I'm surprised I didn't get stopped by customs, because I've actually bought a load of, looks like I bought a load of English animals over here. Okay, there's a little bit of worm in this. It's okay, they might not be dead, but they're bloody dizzy. Right, so what we're going to do now, we're going to create a spigot on one end, a tenon. Okay? I'm going to create a tenon that's exactly the right size, and to do that we're going to use one of these. This is a Les Thorne multi-purpose tool, for sale over here. €1 for pound price today. Pound for you, yeah. So whatever it says in pounds, you can have in euros. That's good, isn't it? That's a good deal. So I get them from Temu anyway, so it's fine. No, they make what actually helps. I shouldn't joke about things like that. Right, so we're going to create a spigot, and this is where you come in, because I want you to tell me what to do. Okay? Bugger off this. No, not that here. So in effect, we're going to put a spigot on one end. Which end do I put the spigot on?
The one with the worm.
The one that's...
The worm.
The worm. Actually, hold on. There's worm all the way through it. Which end would you put the spigot on? Headstock, tail stop? I reckon you'll be half and half. Headstock. Why the headstock? Ah, see, he knows. This guy knows. See, that's why he's working the cameras. Technically minded. Okay? So we do it at the headstock. We do it at the headstock because it's stronger. Once again, on a piece of wood this long, you may not notice any difference. But if it was a long piece between centres, of course the headstock's driving. Okay? It's going to be stronger this end than the other end. Okay? So I'm going to put it on this end so you can see. Simple as that. So I'm going to put it on the wrong end because you get an idea. And once again, I've got it off the rack. I've got an angle. Okay? So what I don't want to do is I don't want to just push. Okay? Nice shavings, but they're scraping shavings. I'm also blunting the tool. The wood is coming round and rubbing that end off. So if I drop my right hand, just a simple action like that, and I lift into the work, I'm now peeling the wood away. I'm getting a better cut, I'm putting less strain on the fixing, and I'm keeping the tool sharper. It's a win-win-win-win situation. Okay, little things like that. So we're going to go in there and we're going to make our spigot. Now I'm using a one-way talon shut, so basically I need a parallel spigot. Okay, I need a parallel spigot so I can grip onto. And when I'm doing a spigot, I'm making sure that this is nice and square, because what gives me the strength and the accuracy is this face here. Okay? Not the spigot, it's that face there. Can you see that okay? It's that face there that's giving me the strength and the accuracy when I put it in the chuck. And don't forget, when I start to hollow this in a minute, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to knock it off. Okay? So if that spigot isn't good, I'm basically knocking the piece of wood off all the time. Because that's the action of turning. That wood does not want to stay on the lathe. Centrifugal force, when I start this lathe up, wants to throw the wood over there. So the only thing that's keeping it on there is the interface, I went all posh then, the fixing between the chuck and the piece of wood. Interface, what am I writing? Okay. Right, so we're now going to grip it in the chuck. Okay, we're going to make sure it's on there. Now, I only insult my friends. If I mention any turners today, it's fine. They are my friends. They are used to it. Okay? They normally give their own back. So what we do here is we tighten this chuck up. Okay? And being long grain, we can tighten up as tight as we like. Because we're not going to try and break. We can't break off like that. We can even do, if I was tightening this up for Emmett, cane, I'd be tying up like this, wouldn't I? Just to make sure that it was on there as strong as possible. I've got lots of Eric Kane stories if you want to know. I've got loads of those. So I've worked with him at a few seminars abroad. So there's our piece of wood on there, and it will be running true. And the reason it'll be running true is because I turned an amazing spigot. Okay? If it's not running true, you know, you can fart about with a chuck, but generally I would just take another cut down there. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to drill the end. Now, remember what I said about added value? Drilling is an important thing in wood turning, something that you do quite regularly. Okay? It's also one of those things that when you do demonstrations to non-wood turners, it messes with their mind, doesn't it? Because the wood's going round and the drill stays still. That's a bit weird. Okay? So, we're going to do that. Now, drilling accurately is something I'm rubbish at. I am the worst driller in the world. Okay? So I have to make sure when I'm drilling a piece and it needs to be accurate, I need to make sure all the parameters, all the odds are in my favour. Okay? So I've seen people just, you know, badly pick a drill up, throw it in there and they end up with a perfect hole. That's never me. I need to make sure that this hole, I give it every opportunity to do right. So first things first, okay, we've got to make sure the drill starts in the middle. So any engineers here? Okay, right, so engineers, you'd always drill a pilot hole first. Okay, so I'm going to create a hole that I know is in the centre. Now if I stick the drill in there, the drill could do this. But if I do this, if I go on there and use the end of the skew, and just make a little V there, I know now that is smack bang in the middle. So when I put the drill in there, the drill is going to hopefully start in the right place. It should. Because if it doesn't start in the right place, there ain't a way in the world it's going to straighten itself up. It's only going to... I'm from Hampshire, south of England, so we have a saying there, it would only get worse. You got that one? Do you understand that one? It's never going to get better, it only gets worse. So we're going to go in there now and we're going to drill. Make sure your Morse tapers are clean, make sure that's locked in there properly. Okay? I'm going to go in like that, and even if the centres aren't quite lined up, it still should pick up that hole where you go in, if the drill wasn't bent. The trouble is, this drill's bent. But, no, we're good. So straight away, it goes in the right place. Okay? So just that little movement of just cutting that little V in there means that it's going to start in the centre when you go in. So what we're going to do, we're going to drill. And obviously what we do this, we drill in like that because we've got a wheel. Now the problem about that is that you are prone to not clearing shavings. Okay? I've taught a lot of people, I've done a lot of pepper mill courses and stuff like that. People always do the turn too far. I bet some of you guys do that as well. You always go, I know I shouldn't do that extra turn, but I have, oh, it's stuck. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you something in a minute that's going to be ingrained, pun intended, in your memory, okay, to stop you going that too far. So I always say 5 turns, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? 5's too much on this piece of wood. It's going to be 4. So I go in, I go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? And take it out. Now, that's fine if you want to drill from there. Now, if you've got a good lathe like this one, and there's not much movement on your tailstock, actually you can push it in, especially with a twist drill. A bit more difficult with a sawtooth machine bit, but I can push it in. And actually, even though it's my favourite, now, don't just love a lathe on wheels. Okay? So I've got to put my foot here and push it in. Now, that's squeaking. If it was squeaking worse than that, or if I had some, a little bit of food safe finish on there will stop that squeaking on there as we go. So I'm just going to go down. I don't know why that's... Let's see how far we can go in. We need to go all the way down to there, really. So I'm going to take that tape off. So you notice I drill with a twist drill, rather than a sawtooth machine bit. The reason I'm drilling this with a twist drill is the angle on the end is giving me the shape that I'm expecting in the bottom of the pot. If I drill it with a sawtooth machine bit, I'm going to have a flat bottom with a point in it. Okay? So generally I don't. The also thing about sawtooth machine bits is they don't work very well when you go deep because they back up. You end up with that big tube of sawdust behind it going hard. Right. We'll try not, excuse the squeak. Right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, because what I'm trying, when I'm drilling this, what am I trying to achieve? Of course I'm trying to achieve a hole, but what's my mindset? My mindset is whatever happens, do not let that come out of there. Okay? Because this is something that if it doesn't make you feel ill, you're in the wrong place. Okay? That makes me feel ill. That's my wobbly legs. That's like my kids when they walk near a cliff. Okay? So that is what you are trying to avoid, because that is serious shit. Excuse the French. Okay? Because that's going to kill you. So when you're drilling in like that, just make sure. It's actually, I don't know why people don't have drawbars a bit more. The only trouble about drawbar is it tends to make you want to go a bit too far at times. Okay, we're having a drawbar through that. So, but that is what you are trying to avoid. Right. So I built a depth hole. It's a depth hole-ish. The hole's there probably more importantly to allow me to be able to work into the side grain when I'm hollowing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm now going to just round over the top of this and face this area off here before I start hollowing. And I want to do that because I want strength in there when I'm working. So we're now going to go over to my signature spindle gouge, which is available over there of course. I'm going to do one of the basic cuts. We're going to show you two basic cuts just on this project, just to get your creative juices going, to show you how to create a cut. Because there's two ways we can create a cut. One is we can come in from fresh air, into the wood. Okay? The other way of doing it is to rest the bevel on the wood and then create the cut. So if I'm doing a convex, bevel on the wood, and then I create the cut. Bevel on the wood, and then I create the cut. And that's my convex cut. Okay? If I want to do a concave cut, I come in from fresh air, and I do that. And that's basically the fundamentals of wood turning. That's the only two things you need to learn how to do within starting a cut. One, get on the bevel, make it cut. One, come in from fresh air. So on this one here, I'm going to come in from fresh air. Okay, so here's my fresh air. And I'm just going to round that over. Across there. Bevel will be cut. The bevel will be contact as I go round. And I'll go all the way around there. And I knew that I was going to take 3 cuts because I count cuts, which sounds a bit weird. Okay? And the reason I do that is because that's one of the things that relieves boredom when you're trying to do some of the big runs of things. Okay, so when you're trying to make 500 or something, the fact that it took 42 cuts last time but only takes 40 cuts this time, that's quite a lot of less cuts. Okay, where you're working. So think about that. It's just one of those things that I do. Gary Rance taught me that. He's as sad as I am when it comes to that. So what we're going to do now, we've got a perfect cut across there. Okay, there's no cracks in that end grain. We're now going to go in hollow end grain. And hollow end grain is something that, once again, some beginners have difficulty doing because they want to treat it like a bowl. We're not going to come in from here and hollow that, and we're not going to do that because it's too difficult. Okay, we're going to go in there and we're going to do a little pull cut in there. But I'm also going to show you the push. I'll do that on the other project. I won't show you that cut here. We're just going to do a simple pull cut there. But now what we need to do, we need to get the tool in its optimum position again. Okay, its optimum position is its safest cut, the largest cut, but unluckily for you guys, it's generally on the point where it's almost gone wrong. Okay? Now if you'd have had this, we've all had it, you know, the tool's cutting beautifully, you think, oh, this is so good, bang! Because the best cuts generally happen at the point where they nearly go wrong. That's why a skew is such an effective tool, because a skew is nearly going wrong the whole time. Hence why, when it works, it's so good, but hence also why it's a difficult tool, because it has no margin for error. This has lots of margin for error. So what we're going to do, we're going to put on one of my teaching aids. Very expensive, my teaching aids. Okay? This is an FPI. FPI. It's a flute position indicator. Okay? Available on my website. Okay, so what it shows to you, it shows you that time about that classic way of teaching about the clock face. Okay, so what we have there is 12 o'clock. You understand that, don't you? 12 o'clock. We call 12 o'clock Cinderella time. Okay, what happened to Cinderella at 12 o'clock? She got on the ship. You'll be in the mire at 12 o'clock. Okay, so we don't go in at 12 o'clock. 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Now 9 o'clock's good, 9 o'clock's nice and safe. Okay, so we go in at 9 o'clock, we can do, tool rest is a touch low. You work across the middle of the tool rest if you can. Don't work on the end of the tool rest unless you actually have to. So we go at 9 o'clock, we can go in there, and we can sort of rub the wood out. It's not very effective. Okay, but we're hollowing, it's nice and safe, I'm not going to have a dig in. Okay, so we now know that if we open the flute, the tool suddenly becomes more effective at cutting. There it goes, there it goes. It gets more effective, more effective, more effective. And when I get to about there, I get to 11:30, that tool is working beautifully. Until I go to 12 o'clock. And then I go in too big a cut, and the tool goes there. Did you hear that one? That was a massive digging. Yeah? You listen again. Here's a massive digging. Okay, here we go. There. Okay, they don't get any bigger than that, do they? Do they? Right. So what we want to do is we want to keep that flute around that 11 o'clock as we go in there to hollow that. Now with the spindle gouge, the advantage of hollowing with the spindle gouge is the fact is it's got a little conveyor belt, which means the shavings are going to come out as I'm working. So I'm clearing the shavings as I go. Okay, let's take that off for a minute. Let me get in there. We'll open that up a little bit more there. Get in there. And all I'm trying to do at the moment is bulk that material away. Okay, this is quite a nice cut for me because this isn't a cut that I use very much in production. So I always try and get that to be quite fun, and I try and be quite agricultural as I go in there. Now, the tool is squawking at me, and the tool is squawking because the tool is acting like a tuning fork. Okay? So basically, you need to go in there and just hold on to it a little bit more and work that out there. Now, I'm going to make a step on the outside now to take my lid. So I'm now going to decide about what sort of time it says. The back onto the multi-purpose tool. And we'll go there. So there's my lid. Like that, I can come in there and just take that there, and now I can start hollowing again. So I always try and do as much as possible with the gouge before I went on to a specialist hollowing tool going. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to keep going, and I will do much more in my workshop than I'm going to do today, on the basis that because I wear ear protection and stuff like that, the squawking doesn't really affect me that much. As long as I'm removing wood, the gouge will take the shavings out. It's a more effective tool before I go on to the hollowing tool. Okay, so let's go in there. So I'm working that outside, inside plate down to a rough point on the bottom. Before I go on to a specialist tool in a minute. Now, I'm not going to hollow this properly in there today because it's just a bit pointless. I mean, it will take too long. And remember that the last 10% takes 90% of the time. Okay, so I generally leave out, it's one of those demonstrators disclaimers, okay, is I am actually capable of finishing it, honestly, I'm just not going to today, okay. You can make your own mind up about that if you want to. So now we've done, as much as our ears can take with the garage, we're going to go over to a specialist holding tool. Now the thing about a specialist holding tool, like this, once again we want to use it as effectively as possible. So this is the Simon Hope Pro Hollower, which it is the best, most effective hollowing tool on the market. Okay, because it will do big stuff, it will do small stuff, it will do dry wood, it will do wet wood. Of course, if you want to do big pots out of wet wood, you could use a hollowing tool like the woodcut or the Rolling Monroe tool. That's absolutely fine. But this will turn desert ironwood. Okay, so that's why it makes it fair. Plus, it's not cost prohibitive. I don't know what these are over here, but probably 130 euros or something like that. Okay, it's not a cost prohibitive tool. Right, so we're going to go in there, and you see I've got tape on the top. Okay, now that tape there, the broken line, says the flute at 12 o'clock. Okay, now this cutter, because it's so small, actually I can almost get away with 12 o'clock if I hold on to it. If I want to be quite aggressive, I can remove it at 12 o'clock. That solid line there is the sort of child's version of entry, on the basis that actually that's incredibly safe, but it won't remove much wood. So somewhere between those two marks is my best cut. And sometimes it'll make a difference about... It depends on what part of the pot you're in. So we're going to go over here. Hopefully I'll get that. Okay. So we can just move that down. And normally I'll be hand over grip, but I'm doing a hand under so you can see what you're doing. Generally all my grips are over like that. You'll see me use this grip quite a lot today so you can get a better idea about what's going on. So we're working about there. And if I open the flute to here, there you go. You see it got more aggressive there. Okay, there. So I'm just coming off that to maximise how I work in there. Right. Yeah.
What shape are you aiming for on the bottom of that?
The bottom to a point, to a slight round point, yeah, not a flat, because I'm trying to work into there. Okay, if these were made in anger, it would be 4 mil, 3 to 4 mil, all the way through even. That's what I would do. I've only actually ever made a couple of these properly anyway, because they're rubbish, they're useless. You can't put anything in them, can you? I'm much more practical with okay, so we're going to go in there again. I'm feeling for the bottom. And this is a really good practice for when you want to make hollow forms and pots and vessels, because it's a small piece of wood and stuff like that. Being dry, if you leave it a bit thick, it's not an issue. It's not going to crack like wet wood. You're just going in there and practicing, because you know the problem with a hollow form is this bit here and the bit down the bottom. And the good thing about this is everybody tries to make an 8-inch deep hollow form on their first attempt. Okay? Don't make them 3 or 4 inches. Learn how to do this. Clean this bottom up in there. Learn how to clean that area in there, working closely forward. Right, so working around like that. What you've got to be careful on this tool, of course, is that it does change height if you use that part of the tool rest. So, just work around. Now, I'm fairly confident about being able to get that shape pretty good in there without worrying about the outside shape yet. And the reason for that is because I've turned a lot of these. Okay? The other thing is I have quite a good muscle memory on shapes as well. But I want to leave this as long as possible, strong, because it means I can hollow it quicker. But if you don't have that, you might need now to go on the outside, okay, and start taking some of the shape down here to give you that guide. So you're doing the yin and the yang. You're going inside a bit, outside a bit, inside a bit, outside a bit, maintaining that strength down there. That's how I was taught to do a hollow form. Okay, that's how I would teach you guys to do a hollow form. Now, of course, nowadays you can take it down thing and buy one of those big fancy wheelie steady things. Okay, but that's not you learning how to do it. I'm going to say properly, but learning how to do it without that steady. I always think you should learn it without the steady, and then the steady makes your life easier, rather than relying on that in the first place. It's like jig sharpening and hand sharpening. I can hand sharpen, but I jig sharpen because I actually think it's better. You know, not many professional spindle turners will say I think it's better, but it is. I think it's better. I think it's more consistent, okay? And actually I think, for me, I get the tools a little bit better, and for me it's quicker, because it's so consistent. Okay. So we're down there, we've got a little bit of a lump in the bottom. I'm just going to come in there now, just clean that up, and then we're going to go about some finishing cuts in there. Like I said, it's not turned properly. It's not a problem, because I'm going to give this away at the end of the... I'm going to give this away, because I then take the worms back to England. Okay, they are dead, by the way, the worms. It has been treated, this wood. It is. Sorry, let me just show you. Right, during the break, feel free to come up and look at these tools here. Come around this way rather than that way, okay? But feel free to come and do that. Don't drop any of them, don't steal them. Okay, but basically, feel free to come up and look. Yeah, this is a 6mm carbide cutter, but it's a carbide cutter with an internal bevel. So it actually is it's not very easy for me to say. It's a cup cutter. Okay, in that basis, so you get that slightly better finish. Now, the downside of this small cutter. The good side of it is I can go in there and I can be really aggressive. What's the downside? Rough in what respect?
Tear out.
No, actually, well, I mean, the tear out is a scrape. You're always going to be scraping in there. So tear out wise, I think it's actually the small cutter would help against it. It leaves little ridges. Okay? Because it's a difficult tool with that small cutter to get it flowing thing. So basically what we'll be doing, we need to go in there, okay, and we need to work that tool as slowly as we can. Now I call that, let's give it a name, let's call it the felt tip syndrome. Okay? If I give you a great big felt tip, a big fat one like that, okay, and I say I want you to colour the outside of that with your felt tip. With your big fat felt tip, you go, it's all coloured, job done. Okay? No matter how quickly or how badly you do it, it's going to colour in quite quickly because your surface area is so big of your felt tip. If you get a thin felt tip, you've got to go really accurately down there to colour that in. So the smaller the cutter, the better I have to be with my cut. Okay? Now obviously with the cup, as opposed to a pure scraper, this cup cutter will give me a better finish than the tool I'm going to use in a minute. Okay? But I just need to work it a bit more easy. So we're going to go over to a flat carbide tool now. So this is the flat carbide, and then once again with the added value, it gives us the opportunity to organise, you know, to show you about and to demonstrate one of these bent tools. Okay? Because these are quite funny. We'll talk about this when we do a bowl later. Okay? People don't quite understand physics when they buy one of these tools quite often. Okay? Because what they do is they do this. Okay? Now this is rubbish because now you're breaking the laws of physics. Because that cutter is not in line with your support. So what do? You go in there and you do this and you go like that. You try to go in there and it continually just keeps falling down and then it does that. I won't go there, we go. We'll give it all we have a little bit of a go there. So it does that. That was a bit dramatic demonstration of what can go wrong. Because to get a swan neck tool to work, cutter needs to be in line with the shaft. Now, this is one of those times where, when I'm teaching, always keep the tool rest as close as possible to the work, until you don't. So now we're going to move that back to there. Now we can go in there, and now the tool now becomes controllable. So we come out there. It's simple. If I do this, it gets to there and it falls over. So what people then do, okay, and I've seen this, is they put a side handle on it. Okay, it's a very blokey thing to do, isn't it? You can go around the workshop pretending you're a soldier. Okay? Don't tell me you are. Is it only me who does that? Sorry, don't take wood turning seriously, that's the most important thing. Okay, so you've got your side handle on there. So why have you put a side handle on there? You've put a side handle on there because you're sticking the tool in the wrong place. So now, because you're sticking the tool in the wrong place, you now have to counteract that with strength. Which is okay, because we're all, most of us are big, strong lads and lasses. Okay, so you go in there and you stop and that go, don't, because if you're sticking a tool in there and it's doing that, it's in the wrong place. Learn to put it in the right place. Because side handles are dangerous. Okay, I know someone who broke their arm with a side handle, just went in there with a side handle, it span and broke their arm. Okay, it's not worth the risk until you have to break the laws of physics. And that's when you start doing big stuff. If you want to make great big pots and vessels with great big tools, of course then, you've got to then counteract it. But most people only do that once. I made a 5-foot diameter bowl once. And that's the thing, once. It was bloody hard work. And in the end, it just went in the field and rotted, because nobody wanted it. Okay? Should use it as a coracle or something like that, couldn't it? It'd be quite fun. So big stuff seems like a good idea, until you're halfway through and you start to ache. Okay, so we're going to go in there, and this swan neck will just go in there and it will give us the ability to go to work. That shape, because it's a scrape, I can increase the speed a little bit. You can work it in and out. Okay, making sure that it's flat on the rest. Until we're at a finish. Okay? That's as good as you're going to get. There's a little bit at the bottom. So, how to get rid of that little bit at the bottom? Now, the little bit at the bottom, okay, do you know the Keith Rowley book? The foundation course, the green one, it was supposed to be the Bible of wood turning. Okay? I watched Keith do a demonstration. Keith was a lovely bloke. I watched him do his demonstration. One of the questions, he was doing a goblet, and the guy said, how do you get rid of that little nipple in the bottom? What's the secret? I said, what's the secret of getting rid? He said, don't make one. Because the thing is, once you've made it, it's a git to get rid of, because that piece of wood is not going round. I always check then, because if there's a quantum physicist in the audience, they will argue that it is going round, just infinitely slowly. But basically, it's not going round. So you're not trying to turn it off, you're carving it off. The trouble is, the tool wants to cut where it likes to cut. So you put it in the bottom, you hit that bit that's not going round, the tool slides off the side and makes a cut there. You've just made the nipple bigger. So you go into that middle, okay, there's a nipple there, you go into the middle, it's not going around, it doesn't like cutting wood that's not going round, it then falls off the side and makes a nipple. So actually you end up chasing it all the way. So you need to hit that nipple on the end and just hold the tool there. So you're going in, you're holding the tool there, okay, you're having a nice feel in there to find out where it is. There it is there. And all I've done there is I've just dropped the tool and I sneak up on it. So in effect, I'm coming up and slightly carving it, okay, and it's still there, of course. Now I put myself under pressure to get rid of this now, haven't I? There it is. Okay, it felt like it was. This is where I start to go sweaty and red in the face, and it's still there. One more, then I'm going to leave it there. I don't think I can get round. Oh, where's my cutter? There. I'm not sure I can get smack bang in the middle. I have a straight one of these back at base, so I might just go in the straight one. So that's it. Oh. It's still there. Right. Always a bit dodgy, this cut. This is when it goes wrong. Like that. Right, so all I'm doing now is I'm just trying to drill a little hole, hitting that centre. Remember what I said about the last temper scope now? Okay, so all I did there is, because that cutting edge is just making it easier, because basically that tool's the right shape. So I've just gone in there very gradually, just felt for that bottom in there and done that. So now that inside of that is finished, you now sand and polish it and do whatever you like to it and stuff like that. Okay? Obviously it's not, it's quite thick, but for all intents and purposes, it's absolutely fine. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start shaping the outside. Okay, and we start shaping the outside, but first we're going to take some of this down. Okay, so we're going to take some of this down here. Like so. Okay, I'm going to see if I can get any support from this. No, I can't, so we're not going to work with that. So we're going to create a vibration as well. So, because I can't get the tailstock in there, okay, to support anything, because I haven't got a jam plug or anything to go in there, I'm going to have to work it down quite gradually to minimise the amount of vibration I get when I work down there, especially as I want to go thin. So we're going to take it down a little bit to begin with. We took it down with a multi-purpose tool, and then we're back onto the spindle gouge. Okay, so here's our spindle gouge. And this is it. If I use the spindle gouge properly, it's exactly the same cut as it would be with a skew chisel. Okay? So we're going to go down there. I'll put the multi-purpose. We're going to take a bit more down like that, and then we're going to demonstrate how to do it with a skew and with a gouge. Now, the thing about doing it with a gouge is we can do it wrong. We can do it wrong and get away with it. Okay? The margin of error with a gouge between it going wrong and it working is massive. Okay? So I can come down here, okay, this is my perfect cut. There. That's my perfect cut. But if I do this, if the handle still works. Here's my perfect cut. If I open the flute, it still works. I can come off the bevel and still not have a dig in. Okay? So what you're doing, a lot of you, will be doing a bad cut but getting away with it. Now, if I go down there with a skew chisel, okay? If I go down there, there's my skew chisel, there's my cut with my skew chisel. There it is, there. Now, you know what happens if I just adjust this slightly? That happens. Okay? Because this tool has no margin for error at all. If you get it slightly wrong, it bites you. So go back on the gouge again. The gouge I can do all three. I can do it with one foot up in the air. I can do jump up and down while I'm doing this. I can actually push the ladle around, and it still works. And that's why we use a gouge. So why would you ever use a skew? Because it's the ultimate cut. No other reason. Okay? Now why would some of you guys use a skew? To show off to your mates. Yeah. Because it's suddenly, if you can use a skew chisel effectively, you're now there. Okay? You walk into your wood turning club every week and you have like an aura around you. Because you can use a skew chisel. Okay? There was a story about this guy turned up to a wood turning club, you know, first time at his wood turning club, and they're all going about, oh, skews, oh, you know, oh, you're a skew chisel man. And this guy's going, well, I can use a skew. You know, anybody can use a skew. Easiest tool in the box to work. And the guy's going, oh, can you? Go on, show us. So he gets the skew and he does this. Okay? Because it's not, scrapers aren't tools, scrapers are people. Scraping is a technique, not a tool. Okay? So remember that when you go down. I'll just blunt that now. So once again, let's go on to this. Here's our gouge cut. And I'm going to talk you through the gouge cut now, before we get to the thinner. Okay? So what I'm going to do with the gouge cut, my feet are parallel to the lathe. I'm going to put the bevel in contact with the wood. I'm going to make the tool cut. I'm going to bring the tool to my left by transferring my weight. As I do that, I'm going to a smaller diameter, so I need to lift the handle accordingly as I go down the slope. That made it sound easy, isn't it? Okay, so here we go. Bevel in contact. Tool cutting there. Run to my left. As I go down the slope, I lift the handle to maintain the same part of the tool cutting. Okay, and there's my cut. What's the skew chisel? Okay, I'm going to raise the tool rest a little bit, and the reason I raise the tool rest is because this has got a 25-degree angle on it, that's got a 35-degree angle on it. Okay, so here we're going to go. So we're going to put the bevel in contact, we're going to make the tool cut there, and I'm going to move the tool to my left. And as I move the tool to the left, I am lifting the handle to maintain the same part of the cutting edge as I run down to here. It's the same cut. Okay? So if you can use a gouge in its most effective way, you can use a skew. Just don't burp halfway through the cut with a skew, because it's going to bite you. Okay? So when people come to me and go, I want to use this, I want to learn how to use a skew, it's why. Why do you know, if you're a hobby wood turner, why do you want to learn to use a skew? I like people to be honest, so I can show off. Because I'm bloody minded and I want to learn how to do it. Okay? Because I've bought 400 different skews and one of them must work. That's always quite a good one. Okay? There is no such thing as a super skew or a magic skew or this is skew, that is skew. And that's one reason why I sell my multi-purpose tools. Because I can use this as a skew. Here we go, here's a skew. I can use this as a skew. And it's a brilliant skew. But I don't want to sell you a skew because you'll just go bang and then throw it away. Okay? I want you to use it. This is my I've used it for, I can use it for scraping, as you'll see. I use it for sizing. I use it for parting off. It's the multi-purpose tool, but can be used as a skew if you wish. Okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to go in here now. I'm going to start to take down here, and I'm going to take this cut down there. Okay. Here's my bevel. I'm going to create that shape. And this is a shape that appears a lot in production work. It's one of those ones that vase shape, it appears a lot in Georgian stuff and what have you. There's the bevel. I'm riding it through as I work down the line. Just remove the stock down there. And once again, I'm trying to maintain the strength there as I'm working from there. And we need to go on that one. I'm going to let it bounce there. There's a little bit there. Just trying to minimise that. Just trying to minimise that as I go down. Okay, but ultimately that's not the end of the world. They're sort of 180 vibration marks. So there's my bevel. There's my cut. Run to the left. Right, I'm going to check the depth because I drilled it quite a long way. It's a bit mad. Okay, we're good there. So our shape's quite happy there. We're now going to take that shape down to there. Now, once again returning, I'm a realist. I'm not looking for the ultimate in shape. I'm not looking for the perfect form and stuff like that. I leave that for the arty people. Okay, I make wood turning art. I actually make wood turning for other artists who decorate it. Okay, some other wood turners who basically are so busy that they haven't got time to make their stuff now. So I make it for them. I won't tell you who it is because that's not fair on them. But basically, you know, that's because I make quite a lot of artistic stuff, but I'm not an artist. I just copy. Somebody comes in with a drawing or something and says, can you make 10 of those? I'll make 10 of those. That's my job. So we're going in there, we're now going to take that down. Now, I'm going to take that diameter down there because now we can talk about shape and stuff like that. And I like things that are elegant. Okay? I don't like wood turning that looks like it's been squashed onto something. Okay? I've got to judge the competition in a minute. I'm going to see people running in there and taking their piece out, aren't I? But it's nice to be able, because that's my job. Most of the nice stuff that I copy is the idea of being elegant. I'm not talking about form and stuff like that. I'm just talking about nice thin parts. If that was fatter here, it wouldn't look as elegant. So that's what I'm aiming for. So first things first, I'm going to take this down to almost a point. I'm maximising wood. Taurus is too high now. Okay, I'm going down here. Okay, I'm going to take that down to about there, and we're going to run over into there with the, we'll use the gouge. Now I could use the scoop, but the gouge will work pretty effectively. So there's my bevel, just run in to there, okay, got a little flat spot there now. I've got a vibration there that I will sand out in a minute, and then we're just going to take a little tiny piece like so. So I don't do much sanding in demos now, I do very little of anything, okay, because I spent my life sanding, but I'm going to take the vibration off this, and it's nice to, you can put polish on this to make the worm shiny if you wanted. Bit worried on the wooden floor, you'll come in here next week and there'll be no floor left, will there? Bloody English woodworms. Now you notice I sand with a tool rest in. Oh, shocking. Les is a bad person. Okay, don't photograph me doing that, put it on the internet because it will just be not worth it. But sanding with a tool rest in, once again, it's a risk reward. Actually, sanding with a tool rest in is nice and safe if you do it here. Where it's not safe, I won't demonstrate it, it's there. Because that way you're going to lose your fingers. Okay? So once again, it's that risk reward. I'm going and risk assessing every time I go to the lathe. So there's our finish there. Okay, we've done that. Okay, we've got a little tiny flat there, and now we're going to part it off. And we're going to part it off, leaving a tiny spigot. You see that little tiny spigot? Okay, there's a reason for that tiny spigot. You're not allowed to answer it because you're obviously far too clever. Okay? Why am I leaving such a tiny spigot? Let me part it off first. Okay. Why am I leaving such a tiny spigot? Pardon?
Yeah, grab it again.
That would be too small to grab again. So that's not the reason why the spigot is so small.
It's for the end piece to like flat.
Yes, I mean that's one of that would probably work on a bigger one as well. Look at the elegance. If I had a long spigot on there, I'm then minimising how thin I can go with this stem. Do you see? What makes this, in my view, elegant is the fact that it goes straight into that quite thin stem. If I had a big long spigot on there, the spigot's going to have to disappear inside that stem. That stem is then going to have to be thicker than the spigot. So what I'm doing then, and that's what this little conversation is about, is my chucking point is determining my design. My fixing is now determining my design. I want my design to be elegant. I don't want, I've got to hold on that, I've got to leave it fat, it's not going to look good, but hey ho. I'm trying to achieve that thing. Plus, That's actually quite a good fixing. With modern glues and stuff like that, that's, you know, it's on there pretty well, even with a tiny little joint like that. So you don't need to make a great big spigot on there. Okay? It was a bit like years ago, I remember going to a craft fair. My wife stopped me going to craft fairs years ago because I used to, you know, not be horrible, but it was just like, there's a lot of rubbish that was at craft fairs 25 years ago. And you could always tell what chuck the person had. This was in the days when people only ever had one chuck. So if they had Axminster chuck with sea jewels, you knew it, because no matter how big the piece was, it always had the same size hole in the bottom. And it was one of those really strange things that their chucking points were always influencing their design. Okay? My holding does not want to influence my design. I want my design to look what I want it to look like, and I need to build my process around it. Hence why I do that. Okay? So we're going to put that there like that, and now we're just going to clean off the bottom.
10 minutes it is.
10 minutes. What, the end of the day? That was quick. Right. So we're taking off the bottom like that, and that's obviously now, we can now start thinking about the base. Now, excuse me, I've still got a tea, see? Right. Let's put this back on, and then we will think about the base. So I'm going to do the base first, then the stem. Now, this is one of these interesting chucking things. This is slightly unnecessary. I'm going to waste wood. Okay? I'm going to be unnecessarily waste wood, but it doesn't matter. Why? Because it's sycamore. Okay? We don't mind wasting that. Okay, so here's our great big piece of wood to make a teeny little base like this. Okay? But there is a reason. And there's a reason because I'm going to show you an interesting technique. Okay? The byproduct is I'm going to waste wood. Now, of course, if I was making this out of something proper, you know, ebony, blackwood, you know, rosewood or something like that, of course I would not use this technique because I wouldn't want to waste an expensive piece of wood. But this is a weed. Okay? I don't really know this anymore. It's all an act, by the way. Okay. So what we're going to do, mount it up between centres and we're going to make it round. Okay, on the chuck. So I'm just going to put the drive centre into the chuck like that. Mount it up. Okay, I've already pre-marked the centres. They're coming like this. And lots of speed. We know it's a small piece of wood and stuff like that, so we can go in there and we can now make this round. Sun's come out. Now one of the things you're taught, I hope, when you're doing a chucking point or a spigot, okay, is you're trying to make it as close to the right diameter of the jaws. Because there is a point where these jaws make a circle. Okay? So that's the point where we're trying to work. Now the one-way talon jaws actually are banana shaped, as are the one-way stronghold chucks. They're actually banana shaped. So actually even when you're outside the circle, you still get quite a lot of grip, which is going to be an advantage for what I'm going to do, because I'm going to break a wood turning rule. Okay? I'm a bit anti-establishment. I'm an old punk rocker. Okay, you have spiky hair, safety pins, all sorts of strange things. So I'm an old punk rocker. So basically, I was anti-establishment. So I thought. Actually, all my mates dressed up the same as me. We all dressed up. So actually, we were chic. But we thought we were different. Actually, we were all the same. So it was a bit strange when you look back on it. So I'm actually going to put as big a chucking point as I can on this. Okay? So I'm now going to break a rule. I'm going to put a big chucking point. And I'm going to put a big chucking point for a reason. So I'm allowed to break a rule as long as I know I'm doing it, and as long as I'm doing it for the greater good. Okay? So I'm going to put it in there. You will see why in a minute. So that's now going to go in there. Now, the problem about using a big chucking point like this is now the jaws are starting to stick out of the chuck. Now the Talon chuck's okay because the Talon chuck has a stop, the jaws can't come out. Now if you're doing this and you have an Axminster chuck, do not do it. The Axminster jaws on the old chucks can come out. So don't use them outside the body of the chuck for that reason, it's dangerous. But for this one it's absolutely fine. So I'm running like that, that's all good. I'm going to tighten that up. Once again, I can tighten up as much as I like. And just in case somebody takes a picture with me using the jaws slightly outside, I'm going to put some tape round to hide it. No, I'll put tape round because it just helps you remember that the jaws are sticking out. Okay? So for the sake, once again, of a little bit of time there, it just helps me to remind me that actually if I get my hand near there, it could hurt all the tool near there. So that's been tightened up now, and my first thing is I'm going to face across here. And once again, the added value. I'm going to show you two different cuts from two different tools to show you which is the best one across here and the benefits of the other one. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to go across the spindle gouge, that will be my first line of attack. We're going to line the bevel up with the direction of the cut there, we're going to pick the cut up and we're going to ease it into the centre. There. And that will give us a pretty much perfect finish. Okay? Now we can get that better. Okay? And we can get that better by using a smaller bevel. It's just one of those little strange things. If we go onto a micro bevel tool, this is my signature gouge, my small one. If we go to the micro bevel tool, this tool will now give me a slightly better finish. Now you won't probably pick this up on the camera, okay? But I've just upped that by 10%. Okay? So I've upped that finish just by using a smaller tool, same cut, by 10%. So why is that important? On this it doesn't really matter because actually they're both pretty amazing finishes. Okay? But if you imagine it was a bit of sporty beach, a bit punky, you know, something that's quite open on the grain, Douglas fir, something that's not so easy to cut, something that's not so free cutting. By picking up that other tool, you just up that game again. Because remember, what you can't do with end grains, you can't sand it. Okay? You can't sand yourself out the SH1T. Okay, on end grain. It just doesn't work. It just cooks, you know, you just case harden it. So we're going to go down like that. Okay, that's now faced across there, and now we're going to fit. We're going to fit our spigot. So what I've got there is I've got the width of the multi-purpose tool plus a tiny bit. So if I go in here like this, that's the width of my multi-purpose tool. I'm going to go there, have a check. We know it's not deep enough yet. We're not too bad on there. We're now going to make that deep enough, so I'm not using a drill or anything. The drill's completely unnecessary. I'm just going to push that in. Okay, I'm just going to push that in, make sure it's slightly over depth. And then that, not quite there yet. So I'm just going to go in there, and you've got to take little baby steps now, just opening it out until that fits in like that. There you go. Okay? So that's in there, and that's in there pretty tight. So every time we're making these great big spigots and stuff like that, you don't need to go, you know, 3 inches into a great big hole. That's a pretty tight fit. And with modern glues, on glue-wise, to preempt the question, I use Type Bond 3 for everything. Okay, Type Bond 3 has never, touch wood, let me down. Okay, it's a really, really good glue. So that's in there pretty tight in that basis. Okay, right, so do we have any questions before we have a cup of tea? If anybody wants to bribe me with a piece, you know, they've got a piece of the competition, if you know, if cash changes hands, I can pretty much guarantee a win. Depending on the amount.
Okay, we're ready for cup of tea. Myself and Vinny will be selling raffle tickets. Vinny might be selling 1 or 2 with raffle tickets, but I am selling 2 ones. 3 for 5 or 7 for 7.
tea lady a clap, please. Thank you, glamorous tea lady. She's not taking any notice. What's her name? Glamorous tea lady. She missed it. She had a clap then and she missed it. You missed your clap. Another clap for the glamorous tea lady. Who I will note bought me a big plate full of biscuits, which I refused. How good am I?
And just before we restart, a lot of you will know our secretary here, Tommy Hart, and he's not well at the moment. He's in hospital with double pneumonia, and he's having a really tough time. One of the reasons I took the job as chairman here was that Tommy would be doing all the work and he'd be doing all the talking. So I have a card here that I pass around, so anybody that knows him or anybody that appreciates him, just put your greetings or your wishes on it and pass it on to him. Okay, thank you.
Who's got a really bad ringtone? That is a very bad ring. It's not the worst I've ever heard, but it's quite bad. I've changed that ringtone. Right, we are back to it. Wow, right, so let's keep going. Right, so interesting, some of the questions that were coming up during the break and stuff like that. It was always quite interesting. I'm happy to answer any questions. Of course, I'm happy to sell you some tools as well. But I am doing a euro for pound price today, so that's a really good value, I think. I'll probably give you money away. So let's talk about how we got so far. So what we've done so far is we've done our body of our piece. We've hollowed it out. Obviously, it's hollowed out absolutely perfectly. Our little, okay, you got a little bit of in there. Okay, we've attached it to our base like that, and now we're going to do our base. Now, what's important about our base when I'm working? Now, if I have the customer come to me, I need this to be reverse mounted. Okay, so you can see here that this has got decorative rings on the bottom. Wood turners, decorative rings. The most important thing you need to learn how to do to be a wood turner, according to some wood turners. Okay, but these decorative rings do one thing. Okay, they prove that I've remounted this. This has been remounted and returned. Now, that's important if you want the piece to be finished. So any chucking point in my world, any piece in my world should be finished to the best of your ability. Okay? So remounting that is important. Now that was, one person asked me, could I make this in one part? Of course I can make this in one part. Okay? But that would be much more difficult to remount then, because it would be quite weak when I turned that. So making it in 3 parts means that I can make it, making this in 2 parts means that that's easier for me to remount. So in a production job, if somebody wanted 100 of those, literally that shape then, I would probably make it in 2 parts. Because I can remount that base quicker. Do you see what I mean on that? So it will be that thing. Is it quicker for me to make up some sort of jig to put that in there all in one go, or is it quicker for me to make it in 2 parts? So that would be my thing. And I'd hope I'd get that early. I'd hope I'd work that out at the beginning of the process. What I don't want to do is turn, 89 of them and then suddenly find a better way. That's really annoying. Okay? You want to find that quicker way. But then again, your work is generally priced on that first way. So if you do find something quicker a bit later, it's always about getting extra money when we're working. So we are now going to turn our base. So first things first, we need to get our interface between our 2 shapes right. We need to get the fact that this needs to look like it's been made out of one piece. So it's got to match. Okay. What I don't want to do is stick a base like that on that piece, because it doesn't match, does it? The base is all chunky, this is quite elegant. So straight away I've got to make that match. So I need to get the interface between the 2. So first things first, I'm going to turn a little tiny bead. I've got to try and find,
Is that any good to you?
No, it's fine. No, that's absolutely fine. I'm coping adequately, I think. Okay, so what we'll do first, we're going to take that diameter down, so we're going to fix this diameter. So this is the diameter of my bead, that's the maximum. I'm going to take down here to give myself a little bit of So I'm now using the multi-purpose tool as a peeling cut. I'm using it as a stock removal cut as I work down. Okay, and then what we're just going to do is we're going to turn a little tiny bead. Now this bead will be too big. Okay, so there's our bead. This bead is definitely too big for this. I should put that on there and straight away it's horrible. It's too big. Okay, it's too big a diameter. So I knew that, which is good. Okay, and I knew that because I've turned millions of them. Okay, well, a few thousands anyway. So basically, I've erred on the side of caution. I knew that was too big, I told you it was too big, and I've just justified it to myself. What I didn't want to do was go straight for what I think is the finished size and do the cardinal sin in wood turning, which is, of course, removing wood that you want. Okay? Because it doesn't matter how hard you throw it, it doesn't go back on, does it? Believe me, I've tried. So we're going to go in there now, and we're going to make that a little bit smaller. Okay, we're going to go to about there, and then I'm just going to create a little tiny bead, like so. Okay, so there's our little tiny bead, and now we should be getting back to what I think. So that now to me is the right size. Okay, I've not measured it, it's just for experience, I think it's the right size. They don't always work, but for me it's there. So now what we've done that, we've got our interface between our body and our first part of our foot. We're now going to go in there now and create our foot. We now need to fix our diameter. And once again, we can measure. You know, my business partner Martin says, if you buy his book, it will tell you how to use the golden ratio mean and all that thing to get all this right. Okay, I turn enough wood turning to sort of judge it accurately. What's quite nice for me is when I turn it and then I measure afterwards and then it conforms. Because that's my eye. Now, I might develop my eye over a period of time because I copy Regency wood turning. The Regency wood turning were, to me, the Georgian wood turners were the best of the lot. It was the time that money became no object and time was no object. So if that chair took 3 months to carve, it didn't matter. They were using fantastic mahogany, you know, South American mahogany and stuff like that. It was just the perfect furniture time before the Victorians came and mechanised everything and ruined it, basically. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go in there and we're going to take this diameter down. So I'm going to take it down to about there because I think that's going to be about right for the diameter of the foot. Okay. It's probably actually, if anything, I've got a little bit small there. Okay, but we'll see if it works anyway. Like I said, this is going to be a problem. I'm not taking this back to the UK. I should give it away to somebody, so I'll never have to see it again. And if it's really bad, I'll write something other than would turn it. I'll write Glenn Lucas on the bottom or something like that. Maybe I should have said that. Right, so what we're going to do now, we're going to go in there. So I'm going to use it. And I'm going to start to remove some of the words that I know I don't want. So we're just doing this as a simple code. And we can see now we're starting to take that down. I'm going to come in there and I'm going to turn the bird beak there. So that's basically half a beaker is a bird beak. And then we're going to come in there, and because I've only got a very short spigot, I can thin that out without a problem of it meeting that hole in the middle. So very simple, I've done that base. Now, one of the things that people say to me is, where do you get your inspiration from? Where do you get designs from, stuff like that? It's pretty much all been done. Okay? So basically what you're doing is you're doing a combination of 3 shapes. You're doing a combination of a straight line, a convex, and a concave. Okay? That's all wood turning is, 3 shapes. I was once doing that to a group of kids, and they said, actually, they said, sir, well, yeah, okay, there's only 2 shapes, a straight line and a bent one. Okay? Which actually, you know, I thought I simplified it. They obviously took it to that next level, which is fair play, okay? So basically, so it's a combination of shapes, and that's what you do when you wood turn, especially in spindle work. You are putting that combination of shapes together to create the overall effect. Same as on a bowl, same as on anything you turn, you're putting a combination of shapes together. So this shape here is a classic. This is a classic base, and this would come from, you know, if I said I had to get inspiration from this, where have I seen this shape before? Let's say a Staunton chess set. Do you know what I mean when I say a Staunton chess set? Now, if you don't know what a Staunton chess set is, just imagine a chess set. Now you know what a Staunton chess set is, because it's that standard competition shape. And that's the shape of the base on the pawn. Okay? So straight away, that's a shape you see all over, so you know it works. It's a really, you know, you put a little ball on top of that, that's your pawn. Okay, so it's a really simple, really shape, you know it works. You're not trying to reinvent the wheel, you're just picking up on something that you know is good and using it. Okay? So these shapes are everywhere. Right. So there's our code there. We'll do the basic cuts a bit later on about how I do that, because I want to get on and do some projects now, and then we can put that on like that, and straight away we know it is a bit, it's a touch smaller in diameter there. Okay, I think. And I'm not fishing for compliments or something like that, because basically, even if I make a bloody awful looking piece, I'm going to get paid, so I don't care today. I hope. Where's the treasurer? Don't upset the treasurer, that's a secret thing. Don't upset the tea lady and the treasurer, that's important, isn't it? Right, so basically we're going to go in there now and we're going to part that off. So I would sand and polish that and do everything at this stage now, which I don't do. Like I said, I don't really finish work in demos anymore. I prefer to talk about the tooling. Okay, so we're going to part this off, so I've gone into a 1/8 parting tool. I'm going to part this off slightly oversized. And now you're going to find out why I made an oversized spigot on there. Because I'm going to use this piece of wood in here as my jam chug. Okay? So I'm now going to insert that into there and return that. Because I don't mind wasting this wood, because it's bloody sycamore. Don't take that seriously, please. Right. So we're going to use that jam chug. So when I part that off, you see I've left a little tiny witness mark on there, which is the same diameter as that. So I should be able to hollow out to that and pop that in like that. That's the plan. I've got tape, and I've got paper, in case it goes wrong. Okay?
Plasters.
Hey?
Have you got any plasters?
Plasters. No, because this is what this is for. You tape around your fingers. There you go. Right, so first things first, we're going to dig a hole through the middle. So we're going to do that thing, we're going to create something that no wood turner likes to see. Do that. Turn it up towards that touch. So we're going to go in there and we're going to dig a hole. We're going to create a funnel. No wood turner likes to see that, do they? Okay, but I need that obviously to be able to fit that through. So we're going to go in here now, and we're going to open that out. We're going to go onto the multi-purpose tool, into there. We're going to come out, so we've just created a little tiny slither of material there. Okay, so there's a little tiny veneer there. Excuse me while I blow there, and then we're going to see if it fits in. It doesn't fit in yet, which is good. All the time it's too small, it's good. And we're just going to now talk about a little bit about the multi-purpose tool and one of its advantages. Now, when I sharpen this tool, okay, and imagine this is my, can you see here, okay? Yeah. Imagine this is my grinding wheel. Okay, when I sharpen this tool, I set it up like that, okay, on the grinding wheel like this. I push up and then run the tool down slightly. And when that does that, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to sharpen this edge here, of course, okay? Because that's the cutting edge. So, that's the edge here. When I sharpen, let me go here again. When I sharpen this edge here, by default, I get a burr there. Okay? That burr is my fine finishing edge. Because if I turn the tool on its side, I can now go in and this tool now becomes a side cutting scraper. Okay? So if I want to remove little tiny amounts, I can go in there And now, I don't know if you can see that on the camera, there is a dust there. Okay, so I'm in there on its side, and that gives me the ability to remove small amounts of material to be able to get this fit right. Because, you know, it's a jam chuck, it needs to be tight. If it's not tight, you run the risk of it falling out while you're turning it. And if it falls out while you're turning it, you run the risk of damaging it. Okay, so there, still good, still plenty of to play with. I'm being very cautious today. Just get on there. So you can see now that this is starting to break away there. So now we should be about right. Actually, it's a bit loose, which is a bit. Okay, we might get away with that in a minute. Okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to come in there and cut a little curve on that, and we might need to use a piece of paper in there just as a gasket. If you weren't such an intelligent audience, I would say, well, I always use a piece of paper in there because it stops it spinning and burning. Actually, no, we're good. Okay, so we'll see. It's just on the limit, but as soon as I touch it with the tool, I'll know whether it's working or not. So we're going to go in there once again with the small tool. Now we've had a little practice with the small tool earlier on, didn't we? We had a practice across the end grain when we first put the base on there. So we know that that's going to give us a good finish. So you see, so I've had that little practice, I know that when I come to actually the money shot here, I know I can actually get a good finish straight off the tool. And now we're going to talk about this little bit in the middle. Because this is important, this little bit in the middle. Right, here we go, here's our cup, there's the jam jar, into our base. A bit in the middle. Now quite often when you're turning, especially on a ring porous timber, sycamore's not too bad, but if this was a piece of ash or a piece of oak, that centre mark might be in a piece of early growth. You know, that softer bit between the medullary rays. And for that reason, every time you go to the middle, you could pull a plug of material out. And you could pull a plug of material out. And you end up chasing yourself down. Because remember, that piece of wood's not going away. You can't sand that hole out the middle because you'd have to sand all the good stuff away to get to the bottom of that hole. So if that's the case, do this, okay? I've left that little bit in the middle there. Okay? Now this isn't cheating. This has been sensible. If I get a bit of 240 grit now, and I pop that off, in 10 seconds, that's gone. Okay? So be a realist. Don't think you have to do it with a tool. There is a better way of doing that sometimes. If you've got that early growth, you've got quite wide growth, and you've got that centre bit, and you keep pulling that little plug out, leave a little bit sticking out, take it off. Okay? Because all the time it's sticking out, it's easy to take off. Okay? Actually, I haven't undercut that enough yet, so let me just undercut that. Of course, you don't need to. You can take it right off the tool if you want. So we're going to put this across here, and now we're going to put our decorative grooves on. Because remember, you're not a wood turner unless you put decorative grooves on a lot of things. Okay, very important. That is slightly tongue-in-cheek. Don't take. My wife says that you should only take about 95% of stuff that I say in demos seriously. I think she's been kind to me because I'd have put it somewhere around 75% to be fair. But basically, there is a little bit of. I do talk a lot of rubbish. I seem to have made quite a good career out of it. Oh, that was interesting. That just span on me then. Now, 3 or 4 grooves. How many do I put on there? Okay. Now you're all supposed to say 3, Les. Because odd numbers work better than even numbers. So I'm going to put 4 on there just to really upset you. Because actually, it doesn't really matter. It's another one of those things that people go, they get quite hung up on. Okay. Yeah, it's a little bit thing. So, that's now been reverse mounted, we're happy with that. We also, the fact of putting 4 lines on there gives me 2 circles, one for the price and one for my name. Okay, obviously normally with my work I'd have to have much bigger bases to put a bigger price on, wouldn't I? So now what we're going to do, we can take that off, so we can take that out of there like that, and it should come out quite easily, which it does. Okay, because generally when you're on there compression, and then you end up with millions of these. Okay, I just cleared these out of my top. After doing this demo for about 2 years, and I've probably done it about 40, 45 times, I end up with a whole toolbox full of these things, which are pretty much no good for anything. Okay? But I did keep them because you never know, do you? You know that as a wood turner. You never know. You know, if you haven't, someone said to me once, he said, if you haven't got enough wood, okay, you need to buy more. And he said, what do you mean? He said, well, I'm going to need to live to 427 years old to turn all the wood I've got. I said, is that a challenge? Because I think I probably could do that. So there's our base, all happy. Okay, we can put that on like that. We won't show you it yet, it's all secret. Okay, that should go on the bottom of that, hopefully. It does. Okay. So we'll put that over there. And now we're going to pick one of my favourite parts. And somebody came up to me earlier on and says, I'm not very good at finials. I don't quite do finials. So hopefully I'm going to dispel some of the myths about a finial. So first things first, what's a finial? It does sound like an Irish word, doesn't it, finial? It's actually Latin. Yeah, it means finish. It's the bit that finishes it. So, finial. People think, what's a finial? Well, a finial's a bit that goes on the top or the bottom. Okay? In fact, it could be a drop finial. So basically, it's something that will finish a point or finish an apex. Okay? So that's what we're looking at when we're doing this. We're looking for something to finish. Now, from a wood turning point of view, we're looking for something to complement it. Okay? The problem about this is a lot of people don't work within their limitations. Okay? Because if you can't turn thin, turn short and fat. Because long and fat doesn't necessarily work. Now it's quite nice, I've looked at the competition table today, so there's not any bad finials on there, so I can talk about this. This is always a very difficult demonstration to do when there's a couple of bad pieces in there. Okay? Because then I get lunchtime, you know, I get mates to each other going, oh, look at that piece, Les won't like that. But luckily there's none there. So in effect, if you can't turn thin, don't try and turn long. Because long and fat doesn't always work. So I'm going to give you 2 massive extremes. If you get an egg cup, a normal egg cup, you wouldn't put a broom handle on the top, would you? Because that would be stupid. It wouldn't work. It would overpower the small piece. If you had a dustbin, you wouldn't put a matchstick on the top because you'd lose the finial. So somewhere between those two is the perfect finial. I've given you quite a range there, of course, haven't I? But that's what we're looking at. So this is what the double finial was all about. It was all about, actually, there's a sort of traditional type finial that we know. You know, that's the sort of thing you see quite a lot of nice wood turning. That would come off a clock finial. That would be could be a house finial on an apex of a roof. It's some of the things that it sometimes get on the back of chairs. Normally be a squatter. It's all about, but it's that nice flame shape with the cove underneath. It's a pretty standard type of technique. Okay, this one is a wardrobe knob. It's as simple as that. Okay. But it's a wardrobe knob that if I put on top of a box becomes a finial. Now you don't see that as a finial, do you? You see that as a knob. Okay? But it's still a finial. It's still finishing off the shape. So the good thing about a double finial is it gives you the ability to be able to play a little bit between, you know, having a traditional type point thing. Also, the fact it's made in one piece is a bit weird. Okay? Now, if this was out a proper piece of wood again, I would make that in 3 pieces. I wouldn't want to waste 2-inch diameter black wood and turn it all the way there. Okay? I'm not a tree hugger. You know, I turn a lot of very expensive wood into big piles of shavings. I'm not a tree hugger, but I don't like waste. I don't like waste for a second. It really it makes me feel ill. If I've got a job that needs 2 inch and I've got 3 inch in stock, if I have to cut that 3 inch down to 2 inch, it makes me ill. Even if I'm charging them enough to do it, I don't like it. You know, I find it a massive waste. I don't like waste. So what we're going to do, okay, we're going to mount our piece up between centres. Again. So here's our great big piece of wood. It was here just a second ago. Here's our great big piece of wood. There, thank you very much. That's what we brought the stick for, wasn't it? To point. Thank you very much. So that's basically what we're looking at. Okay, when we're doing it. So we're mounted up between centres, another piece of crappy old sycamore.
That's what you're doing, dozens of those. How do you keep the uniformity between?
Oh, copy turning. If I'm doing that's right. So copy turning is all about marking out, measuring, and making 2 cuts the same. That's all it is. Making 2 cuts and making a cut the same over and over and over and over again.
You copy from your first one, or do you have it set up?
You copy for the first one. Yeah, always get it. So but I have a set of copying fingers. I don't know if you've seen these where they rest on the wood like this. And you take the wood away, and when you got the rest of the wood away, they fall through. Because it saves you picking up the wrong calipers. That's very annoying. But right, if you pick up a set of calipers that are bigger than you want, it's when you pick up a set of calipers that are smaller than you want. So I use copying fingers to speed up that process. The more you do by eye, the quicker you become. And that's what I'm now developing. You know, it took me 5 to 10 years to learn to be competent at wood turning. The rest of the time, you're now refining techniques. So if I watch somebody like Steve Jones, who's the best wood turner I've ever seen, he will guess a lot of dimensions. A lot of diameters he's doing by eye. I try and do now as much by eye as possible because it speeds the process up. And so you're developing the eye all the time. It's a bit like finding centres. It's quite weird that, you know, I can find centres quite easily. But also, being from the timber industry, I can find the centre of a board quite easily. So I put a board on the old crosscut saw and I cut it in half. And I normally get it pretty accurate because I've spent years doing that. So it's just building up that knowledge, that muscle memory as you're working. Okay, so here's our piece of wood here. Here's the top, here's the bottom. We're going to put a chucking point on it first. So we're going to make the piece round. So back onto the spindle up and down. It was coated. On the spindle up and down. It's because they've got weird handles on, I'm not used to them having these handles on, so I'll be looking at the blades and not handles. So somebody noticed that this edge is ground off over there, that's just bag grinding. Okay, I don't use that wing for anything, so it doesn't make any difference. Okay? Right, so we're going to make this piece round. Okay? But you can see why people like sycamore. You can easily get shaving off it, isn't it? There you go. Right. And once again, I'm going to break that wood turning rule. I'm going to make an oversized spigot because I need the max diameter there. See, well, you already know why. You've already worked it out. So I'm breaking the rule. Is it raining again? Or is that the kettle? It never rains in Ireland. Okay, so we're going to create an oversized spigot on one end, and hopefully it should just be on about the limit, and we might have to take it down a touch more, we'll see. Okay, but I want that as big as possible, so I'm going to max this chuck out. Right. There it goes, perfect. So we're going to max that chuck out into there, we're going to stick that into there, and we're going to tighten it up. Right, the food's turned up, by the looks of it, that's handy. Okay, so we're going to max that chuck out there, and well, there's a nice bit of ripple sycamore actually. It's a bit of a shame to turn most of it away, but hey ho. So first things first, the finial needs to fit inside. So obviously when I'm turning this, the finial that I'm making has to fit inside the piece. Okay? And for that reason, this diameter here, Okay, it needs to match that diameter there. So it gives us the opportunity to be able to size the piece. I did bring a pair of verniers. Okay, so we're just going to put that onto there like that. Okay, we're going to add a little bit of wiggle room, as the guy that taught me called it, and we're going to take this down to that diameter because we don't need this body any thicker than that. Okay, so that's not tight, so that's tight, that's tight, that's tight, that's sat in and working. So we'll take that down to there. So all I'm going to do is turn over my spindle roughing gouge onto the side. And the reason I'm turning it on the side is because I want to avoid hitting the chuck. And we're going to take that down. Okay, I could size this with a tool if I wanted to. Actually, I'll do it up there. I will show you how to size. Because one of the things that's interesting, people don't know how to size. Sizing one-handed is easy, as long as you obey the rules again. Tool on the tool rest, light grip, out of the firing line. Okay, tool in like this. One of the advantages of the multi-purpose is I can wiggle it. If I wiggle it, the tool will just run in easier and allow that to just fall on. That sized that absolutely perfectly. Let me show you that again. So there, I put a little wiggle into it because it just cuts a little bit more effectively until that falls on. But you notice what I have done with these, I've taken the corners off there because if you don't, when you put it onto there, they can opposing forces, they can grab and it can throw back at you. So this is oversized. I hope it's oversized anyway. We can take that down. And the finial has to fit inside the piece. So, not that one. I want to make sure I fit the right one. Let me put that one over there. Okay. So it's got to fit inside the piece. So this piece is this deep, so we're fine. So we're going to go to about here. Okay? We know that should fit in, no problem. Okay? And now we can start taking away, once again, some of the wood that we know we don't want. And we can do that with the roughing gouge. Now, shaping with a roughing gouge, as I'm doing here. This is a wrist reward cut again. It's actually easier, and it's actually safer to do that with a bowl gouge or a spindle gouge. Okay? But it means I've got to pick up another tool. If you want to do it with a roughing gouge, you have to obey some of the rules. So you have to work out with the roughing gouge what's the dangerous, what's going to happen, what's the worst thing that can happen. The tool can run back on me. Okay? So I need to avoid that tool running back towards the chuck. So what I need to do is I need to make sure that I'm behind the cutting edge the whole time. If I get ahead of the cutting edge, it can run back on me. So here's my cutting edge, here's my angle, here's my body, and I'm behind the cutting edge, and I'm taking off there. There. And all I'm doing at the moment is I'm roughing out. I'm roughing out my finial. So I'm just removing wood that I know I don't want because I want to make sure it fits in there before I do any more shaping. Okay? So straight away we know it fits in there. All that's stopping it going on there is that shoulder there. We can now start thinking about that shoulder. So I now need to take this down in a much more abrupt angle, so much more of a parabola down there, which I could probably do with this, but if I have a run back there, I've just ruined the piece completely because I've removed this piece of diameter. So I want to make sure that I don't, so I'm going to go this work. What I'm going to do now, I'm going over to the spindle gouge again. And I've got to make sure this cut counts. So I'm going in there, and I'm coming in with that flat, almost straight side there. Because I need that shoulder to sit in that little recess at the top. So it's almost straight. So now that's going to go up against that shoulder there. Now I can fit the shoulder. So now I take the diameter down till it fits. Now it doesn't want to be too tight. Okay, if you make it too tight, with thin finial, what can happen is it can break off when people are taking it off and on, which I don't want to happen. So we're just going to go in there, we're going to take a little bit down. Now it's quite difficult to fit this, because obviously it wants to go in and out, so we want to make sure that we creep up on it. Okay, we're definitely too big at the moment. So we're just going to creep up on that diameter. There, some small baby steps. Okay. We'll make sure that it is that diameter that's stopping it going on, not the length of the piece. So I'm actually just going to pop the end off this, because I don't want that piece with the hole in, of course. So that's my waste. So we're going to get rid of that hole. Just round that over, just to make sure that we know that it's not the length of it that's stopping the lid going on. Did I already check that? I did, didn't I? Yeah. So we know that's definitely not the length of it. Tiny bit more, and then it will go on. Okay, so now that's super tight. Okay, it's far too tight now, isn't it? You know, if you give it to Auntie Morag for her Christmas present, she's never going to be able to get that lid off to get into her teeth or anything like that. She's going to keep it in there, is she? It's going to be a massive problem. So we're going to take that down a touch more. And it needs to be parallel or parallel-ish. Okay, still a touch more there. And we're just marking out at the moment. We're just creating that blank to make our finial. Okay, so that's fine there. Okay, so that's good. Now, finials. Who's famous for finials? Cindy Drozda. She's famous for finials. Okay. Now, what makes her finials really nice is the fact that they balance well and they're very thin. And the great thing about really thin finials is they tend to work on any size piece. It's really strange. You think you'd have to get the diameter right, but when they're super thin, they just work, even on quite big diameter pieces. Like I said to you before, Cindy's wouldn't work if they were fat. It would just look like a big broom handle stuck on the top. So we need to make it delicate, we need to make it nice. If you can't make it delicate and thin, make it short and fat. It's as simple as that. Make it to your ability. Okay? Of course, keep pushing it and pushing it, getting as thinner and thinner as you work. Of course, you've got your experimental pieces. But try and stick within your limitations. So this is a fairly simple finial to turn. This sort of flame finial as we work. The lighting's not great in here, but we'll give it a go. Okay, so first things first, I'm just going to trade a little tiny pointy bit on the end. And then we're just going to keep working it back. Right, I'm going to come back and check the cameras. Because what I'm seeing now, that's fine. I want to see how good I've got been to impress you. Okay? Is that one zoomed in? Don't worry yet, not worried yet. Still not zoomed in enough, that's good. Some of the modern camera systems though, you can't hide. When I first started demonstrating, your visuals was a mirror above your head, and your audio was me shouting. That was it. Nowadays, it's a bit like all HDs and 4K and stuff like that. So we're going to go finish. I don't know what James put in the wine last night, but everything's fuzzy, James. Where is he? You maybe drink too much. Okay, so we turn that little finial there. Now what you can't do is go back to that. That's now finished. Okay? Don't go back to a light as firework. Doesn't matter how much it's calling to you, do not go back to it. Right, so I'm just now getting the balance right. I'm just removing wood in any way I know how to try and get that diameter right. Okay. go a little bit short there. And that's my shape, okay? So that's my shape roughed out. I'm going to round that over there. Now you notice I'm doing this all with the gouge. Okay, I'm doing it all with the gouge because I can do the whole shape with the gouge without having to pick up a skew. And now we're going to get on to supporting the work with your fingers like I'm doing now. Supporting your work with your fingers, whether you're doing spindle work or whether you're doing a bowl, is once again that risk reward. Okay? If you don't want to do it because you think it's unsafe or you're not confident doing it, don't turn thin. Okay? Turn within your limitations, because if you don't support your fingers, you'll break it. Or you'll break more often than not. I learned to do this turning lace bobbins. I used to hate turning lace bobbins. Luckily I never did millions of them, but I did enough to hate them. Okay? So what I've done here is everything is as safe as it can be. I'm not trying to do it here like this because that would be dangerous. I'm under the tool rest. I've got the work support in there and I'm putting support rather than pressure. So I'm just supporting that because all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to stop the bevel of the tool pushing the piece to breaking point. Now the pressure is quite interesting because people do tend to put too much pressure on there. And if you can smell burning pork, you're pushing too hard. Simple as that. So you just need to just rest that finger on there and work, making sure you're on the bevel. This is not the time. This is not the time for a scrape. This is the time to keep that bevel in contact. The lighting isn't perfect in it. Okay. Oh, that's quite. Okay, it's all good. Refine that shape, and now we've got that classic, what I would call a flame or a water drop finial there. And now we just need to come in here. We're going to replicate our base. So here's our code to replicate our base along the piece, and that's basically the fin we've done. Now, it's quite fat there. I'm not sure whether, does that one look about right on there? Yeah, I think I'll leave it that fat. I want to take it down, I want to take that diameter down a little bit. Okay, I'm going to, see, I can't resist it, can I? Now you can hear that I'm supporting it, and you can just hear the thing starting to vibrate on the bevel of the tool, around that, into there. This tool will just fit into the grooves there, round, round. And if I want to just tickle that up a little bit, I can go onto the skew, and I can just create that perfect punctuation point between the two surfaces. Okay, so we're going to go on there a little bit of 240 and just titillate that, get rid of all those big tool marks that I've left in there. Once again, I'm standing with the tool rest in, I've just turned this abrasive over like that so I can just okay, and the trouble about this one is I'm actually not quite sure what it's going to look like until you stick it on the top.
When you're doing the finial with the gouge, do you make allowance for the fact that you're going to be sanding later? Much?
What I would do is when I go thin like this, instead of going that extra cut with the gouge, sometimes I would just do it with abrasive. You know, the thing about this is it's knowing about realism. It's being a realist. You're not, you know, as a turner, you're sort of an eternal optimist. But going back up here because you've got a little ridge is just suicidal. It's not cheating if it's not cheating if it's the right technique to use. Okay. So basically, if you think, yeah, I've got a little, you know, I'm roughing out the shape. Yes, I could refine a bit more with a gouge, but that's going to bounce. What's the point? Abrasive, 240 grit does it. I'm using a wood that sands quite easily. Now, if I was using a piece of black wood, that doesn't sand as easily. So actually, I've probably got to be a bit more precise with the tools to get that shape right. But when you've got a piece of wood that shapes with the abrasive, you know, use it. It's about getting it right and getting that piece off that you're satisfied. Of course, it's more satisfying to do it off the tool, but you have to know your limitations. Okay? So there's no point, you know, if you can't turn that fin, I mean, if you ended that finial there, okay, that's absolutely fine. Don't try and do that bit on the top. Do that bit. And that's what I do on a course. If we're making these on a course, what I would do is you try and make this, but if you break it off, you've still got that. And only the people on the course know that that started off with something different. As long as he pays us enough each time to keep quiet, we're fine, aren't we? Right, so we've done that now. We'll make sure that fits in there. Okay, oh, I did a longer body on that one, that's interesting. We've got to make sure that fits on there carefully still, because now we're going to start turning our top. Now, we can do most of our turning, okay, of this bit here, the fatter finial, at this stage. I could probably actually turn the whole thing from this fixing and then pile it off. The only thing about that is there's no jeopardy in that, because the jeopardy on this will be remounting the finial like that to finish the end of that off, won't it? And you like a bit of jeopardy, don't you? You guys watch the Grand Prix, you know, if there's no crashes, you turn it off, don't you? In your Grand Prix without rain or crashes is boring. So you want me to break this, don't you? You nodded. He's not a very nice person, this one here, is he? He went, yeah, I do that. Oh, well, it didn't make my day. Can I video it? But you don't mind, because you won't be there when Les broke one of these, didn't you? Ah, see. You do really. If I was watching, I'd want me to break it. Anyway, we'll try not to, but if it does, it does. It's not the end of the world. So we're going to bulk away some of this material first. So onto the spindle gouge. Once again, I don't want to thin it out too much there. Make sure I get that cut nicely on there. And now I want to make sure that the relationship when I put this on is right, which it is, okay? There's a little bit of a shadow line there, which is perfect for what I want. Now, I haven't got a short tool rest, but it'll work no problem whatsoever, this one. So I'm trying to make every cut, right? And what I'm going to do on this end is I'm going to put an acorn. So first things first, to get the symmetry, I'm going to make this fillet here, same diameter as that fillet there. I'm going to go in there, but not too thin. Okay, not too thin to start with, because I don't want to weaken this before I turn that bit up there. I'm going to fix the diameter. To what I think is going to look right. I can try the top one, but I sort of quite like the flying by the seat of my pants. In there with a parting tool, so I've got a thinner parting tool, you can sit there in like that. Okay, so there's going to be the same shape as that one there. We're then going to go on with the spindle gouge again, and we're going to create an acorn. I need to get rid of some of that. Okay, and a pretty standard acorn, as in an egg. Okay, so you can see what I'm building there, I hope, on the screen. Get a little bit of vibration there. Now I'm going to have okay, so I'm going to have not have a lamb's tongue, sorry, a bird beak there. I'm going to have a flap. Now, when you're doing techniques like this is quite interesting because sometimes when you're doing this type of work, it becomes lathe dependent. Okay, so what does Les mean by that? That means if I'm working on a big mark, don't get me wrong, I love the BL300, it's a great lathe. It's actually quite difficult to do this because the headstock's out here. Okay? Because I'm used to working on a one way, it's like this, there's lots of space here. So this is a great lathe for doing this. So if you want to do a lot of intricate work, this lathe is better than a big mark. Because I can get in here. If I want to turn bowls, the big mark's better because the headstock will be better. But you know, it's a thing about, to make a headstock strong, you have to make it quite big. It's one of the, you know, one of the things of this. It makes it more awkward. Because you can see where my arm is now. Oh, there you go. That one wasn't intentional. You happy now? Yeah, see? I did that one just for you. Yeah. It's alright, I've just lost that. Now you can hear it starting to bounce now, so now I've got to be ever so careful because I'm going to end up texturing the piece. So I'm just going to check that. Oh, I just about got away with that. Okay, so we're going to come in now and just turn the rest of this into an acorn. We're going to round that over there. Like that. Of course you can texture it if you want to. A little bit of a return there. And into there. Okay, so what we've done there is I've not quite turned it all off, but I probably would. You know, in the real world, I would probably just run that down with a skew, with a series of cuts and pile it off and finish it by abrasive. But like I said, that's no jeopardy. The jeopardy is me reverse mounting this. Because it's a stupid, you know, it's quite fun for me, really, he says. Okay. Just going to run a little bit of abrasive, just in case there's any vibration mark there. Once again, I'm just going to sand that area there. It's a bit too faulty. Now, sand is quite interesting because people are afraid of sanding. They think it's cheating, or they think that, you know, they're doing something wrong, or, you know, if they use 80 grit, they're a bad person. You know, the wood turning police are going to come and arrest you. Basically, you use the right grade for the job. I mean, when I used to demonstrate for Primark, I used to sell sandpaper, and people would walk on the stand at a national show, and they'd buy 120, 180, 240, you know, down to that. And I said, would you want the 80 grit? No. Especially if they're in front of their friends. You know, they would, you know, then as soon as their friends turn their back, they say, yeah, go for some 80 grit, please. It was like buying drugs. You know, it was almost the most embarrassing thing ever. You know, people would walk in and say, you know, oh, but it's not. It's the right tool for the job, sometimes. Sometimes it's not. And the problem about coarser grades of abrasive, anything up to 240 is basically a shape changing grade. Now you can use that to your advantage sometimes, you can tickle that shape with it, but also it will be, if you sand badly, it becomes a disadvantage because it will then remove all your hard work. So there's no point turning all that beautiful detail like that, all that nice crispness, and going there with a bit of 120 because you're going to ruin it all. I mean, luckily when you turn the crispness, normally you get a good finish off the tool. So if I'm turning a piece of wood that's not going to sand very easily, or is quite soft and carry, I wouldn't try and put that detail on there for that reason. I would make something much more organic. I turn plywood, okay, laminated plywood into lamps for a customer. Okay. Now, if any of you have turned plywood, it doesn't even matter if you can get the best grade ever, it always has holes in it. It always tears out. It's horrible stuff. So I sand that with 40 grit. I love it. It's the best thing ever. You go like this, and you take off about 1/4 inch off it. because it's more effective than doing it with a tool. The thing is, I couldn't turn a plywood lamp in a beautiful, crisp shape. It's completely pointless. These are basically balls. Okay? They don't start as balls, they start beautiful, then by the time you sand them a 40 grit, they end up as balls. But basically they are, because you can't, you have to sand it with that grade abrasive, so you can't create a really crisp shape on it. You need that wood to be able to do that. You need the accuracy in the wood to be able to do that. Right. So we'll pop that off like that. I'm going to have a quick look, see what it looks like. I'm not going to show you yet. Is that the one? We're now going to jam that in there, which is silly. Okay? Don't do this because you run the risk of breaking it. I'm going to do it because I can, and it's going to give me the opportunity to be able to put some decoration on top of this if I wanted to. How would I do this normally? Well, I'd probably grip it in the chuck very carefully to do it. But we're going to do it with a jam chuck. Now, if this comes loose in the jam chuck, it will break, which will please some people. So we're going to go in there now, we're going to pop a hole in there to make sure the finial fits in. Obviously the finial's got to fit through into the chuck. Okay. So that's going to fit into there. I'm going to turn it to fit into there, hopefully. Okay. So we're just trying to size this somewhere close at the beginning. A couple of mil. And we're looking to try and make a jam chuck that sort of fits. So I'm even turning a bit of an angle on there because I want quite a nice surface area when I go in. Okay, so I'm trying to get that bit to fit on that curve as well. So I do need one. So I'll drop it on the floor and break it. So I'm just going to come in there and just take that bit down. That bit down again. And once again, whenever you're doing this, you're creeping up on it. You're not going all for it in one go. Keep creeping up on it, creeping up on it. This is why I need a glamorous assistant, isn't it? So I can just keep passing it to them. I'm not allowed to say her anymore. Okay, so we're not far off now. We're probably half a mil. So a millimetre diameter, half a mil off the radius. So we're just going to pop that in there. I'm going to touch deeper. Once more, I'm just using that side of that tool just to fit that in there. Okay. And what I need in there now is I'm trying to get a squeaky fit. Okay, so a squeaky fit is slightly tighter than an interference fit. You see, I like to keep things basic, can't you? An interference fit is that sort of nice suction type fit where this is, I'm trying to get it to go in there and it's going to go squeak. Because that means that the wood fibres are actually gripping each other. So I'll keep on with it. This is when once again I start to think, oh, I'm taking too long. But we'll give it a go. Oh. Told you, squeaky fit. There you go, so that's a squeaky fit. So I've given it, there you go, I've given it every chance, I'm sorry, but I've given it every chance for it to work, okay? There's always one in the audience. Now, I'm actually going to put tape around it. Now that's in there really tight. Now I'm going to put tape around it because if I do have a whoops-a-daisy, you know, which will be on purpose of course, if I knock that out, that tape will stop it falling on the floor, so I've got every chance of it not breaking. If I didn't put that tape in there and knocked it off, it's going to break. So that little bit of security onto there. That's running nice and true. Our first cuts are tentative. There, it's a tentative cut. There. Okay. So there's the top of our A-form done. Quick bit of 240 grit across there. I'm actually going to texture that the top of that just to prove that I've sort of remounted it. So I'm just going to, let's see, I'm going to scrape a series of lines. Right, so once again, just because I can, for no other reason, whether you like it or not, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to pop any roughness off there. And once again, that just goes to prove that I've just taken that time to remount it. So when I'm judging competitions and stuff like that, I spot things like that because that's the things that impress me. That person who's gone to that next level, who's just thought, well, how can I chuck? You know, they might have had to make a jig. They might have done some strange chucking things. If you're ever in the national competitions and I'm judging them, think about that. I want to know how it, I want to look at it and try and work out how it's made. And that impresses me. I think who was showing me that off-centre stuff yesterday? Was that James? He was showing me some Polish wood turner that does the weirdest off-centre stuff. And I couldn't work that out. That was all very strange. So, that's in there tight. Okay? Now, it's okay because it's a female jam chuck, so if it's tight, it's not an issue, because I could turn that down there. Now, what happens sometimes, though, is if I take this off, it loosens off because the compression on there grips onto that. So if I'd have got this in there and it was a little bit loose, I could have tightened the chuck up because there's enough give in that ring to tighten up a little bit. So use that wood. You'd be amazed how many times I've got, I think between us and in the workshop now, we must have 50 chucks in the workshop. Okay, we've got 7, you know, and 9 lathes, but we've got every set of jaws going. Okay? Yeah, I still use wooden jam chucks weekly in my production work because it's a great non-marking way of holding pieces on. Okay, and if you watch Steve Jones, if you watch Dave Dalby, you watch the production turners, we're all using these type of chucks. So, that one there, that one there, so I'm trying to make sure I fit the right finger into the right pattern in there like that. That one's going to go around there. I'll do it right, make sure you can't see. Oh, that's interesting. The eighth one's too short. Actually, they're both too short. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so both these finials are too short. In effect, this finial isn't too short, the body's too long. Okay? Why have I just said it that way around? Because I could have shortened this, but I couldn't have lengthened that. There you go, see? So that's where, so there's no, you know, you laugh about it, but it's actually, there's method to the madness. So in effect, where's a good place to display it? There? Behind you. Behind me, thank you. Right, so there's our, you know, someone once called it a 1970s lager glass. Did you have lager glasses like that in the 70s? Okay, there's our proper finial. Okay, so that's what we see as a finial, and that's our knob.
Well done, thank you.
They're very short. Thank you very much. Now what people say to me is they say, well, if you weren't doing it in front of an audience, Les, how long would it take you to make? And then I do some sort of demonstrator's BS, don't I? So about 3 minutes. Okay, I don't. I think that's, to be finished completely, it's probably an hour and a quarter's work. Okay, have a nice piece of wood, sanded inside and out, turn 3 to 4 mil thick all the way through, everything like that. It's probably about an hour and a quarter's work there to do it properly. Okay, so that will be about it. Okay? Because I would be 30% harder with most of the cuts because I'd be pushing the wood off as we're working. Okay, so that's our piece here. I will hand it round. Okay, if anybody gives it a bit of a stroke on the way round, it'll be smooth by the time it gets round to the end.